The purpose of this video is to go over the sample program. If you're comfortable just reading through the sample program and understanding what it's doing, you don't need this at all. Or maybe you do, I don't know. I'm going to do it anyway and you can decide. So the top of the program has a whole bunch of pound includes. Yeah, yep, you know what those are. These are the things that OpenGL is going to need, and so you need these, and pretty much they need to be in that order. Ooh, comments. Yeah, you've probably heard about those. This is the window title. Please change out the name Joe Graphics to your name. I know none of you is named Joe Graphics. I looked in the roster. Here's some interesting stuff you're going to need. This is the ASCII code for the escape key. This is the initial window size. If you're on a big monitor, make this something bigger. I set it to 600 just in case you're on a laptop. Here are some parameters for the program. You put these things up at the top. You don't hard code these numbers into your program. You put these up at the top because one of the things you'll learn early on is you want to change things constantly in your graphics program. You want to make something a little bigger or a little smaller, or you want to make it a different color. It is so much easier to change those numbers up here in the top of the program than it is to go find where they're hard coded in the program. Yeah, there's some enums here. This is orthographic projection and perspective. You can toggle between them. There's some buttons. Here's the background color, which is black. You know, red 0, green 0, blue 0. If you'd like it a little lighter, some people like a darkish gray. You can do that. You know, if you change this to like 0.2, 0.2, 0.2, that'll happen. Line width for the axes. If you do 1, they're a little thin and hard to see, especially in my videos. So I make them 3. Here are colors. You can enum the colors, that is essentially put pound defines here. And then corresponding to that, there are names of colors, and corresponding to that, there are RGBs. This comes up in the menu system. And so you'll see it later. And it's not something you're required to do. Here's a bunch of globals, and I recognize that putting in global variables is not necessarily the best of practices, that you really should have a struct and make a copy of the struct. It's here just to make the code look a little cleaner. I'm trying to get all of you thinking in terms of, you know, graphics thinking, computer graphics thinking. Um, and I'm trying to keep it simple for that. Here are the function prototypes. You know, the compiler really wants to know about these. Here's the main program. The main program is deceptively simple. You know, it's got some function calls, it's got some comments, and oh, poof, we're done. This is an event-based program. And so you set up a bunch of events and then you call glut main loop and that just goes off into a loop looking for the events and it actually never returns. This extra line of code here is just to make the compiler happy. Animate is something called the idle function. We'll talk about that later when we talk about making things move, but the way it's going to be set up is that this call to animate, is going to happen every time that event loop has nothing else to do, which actually is most of the time. Display is a really crucial function. It's the callback that draws your whole scene. Okay, and the purpose of a lot of your program is to change the global variables that you saw at the top of the program, and the display callback will redraw the scene based on those global variables. So if you want something to change a global and get display called. Um, yeah, okay. I'm not going to go through all of this. I know you can read it. This sets up the viewport. This little logic right here is to create a square basically in the middle of the window. So if you stretch the window starts out being square, but if you stretch it to be a rectangle, this little bit of code will find the largest square in the middle. Here's the viewing volume. This is the orthographic projection. This is the perspective projection. It depends on the value of this global variable. Okay, and you can change that from the menu system. So poof, you can go between ortho and perspective. Here are the transformations. This is the look at, meaning here's the eye position, the look at position, and the up vector. Again, a lot of these things will come up in the getting started um, note set, which hopefully you've already looked at. Here's how to set up rotations. These values will be set by moving the mouse. And so this is how you move the mouse and with the left button down and get rotations. This is set by the mouse being moved with the middle button down. And so you get a scale factor. This is to turn the axes on and off. This is to draw the object. This is a display list, and there's a whole note set just for display lists. Be sure you look at it so that this makes more sense. But it's a way of storing away an object and then calling it up very quickly, and that's what's going on right here. There's some text down here that doesn't need to be here at all. It has nothing to do with anything. I just wanted to show you how to do text. Here's if you want text that moves. And so if you hold down the left mouse button and move the mouse and rotate the scene, this text rotates. Here is how you do text that doesn't move. Like if you want to put your name in the lower left corner or something, you can do that. This is double buffering. This will make more sense when you look at the frame buffer note set. All right, so that's display. That's really important. All right, here's how you handle menus. Okay, so every time you select something from the menu, you right click in the program, you bring up a menu, you select something. Every time you select something, it calls one of these functions. And the function typically will set a global variable. Okay, so yeah, menu, 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 menu. Yep, quit. There better be one of those. Typically, we also put a reset in our computer graphics programs. If you ever get just totally lost in 3D, which is much easier than you're thinking it is, you just hit the reset and all your transformations go back. So there is a function called reset in this code, and its job is to reset all the global variables to some good state. All right, more menus, more menus. Um, well, here's a helper function to do some string stuff. There is a glut stroke character, but it only draws the characters one at a time. And so you need to slide over, draw a character, slide over, draw a character, and that helps you do it. You know, if you need to get the elapsed seconds since the start of the program, here's a little helper to do that. Here's to initialize the menus, okay? And then the menus are in groups. So here is the color menu. We call glut create menu to do that. Here's the function it's going to call if you select from that menu. And then here's where we add the color names to the menu. So if you run the sample program, select the color, and then you can, it ends up here. This turns the axes on and off. Um, I'm going over the ones that are most important. This toggles between the orthographic and the perspective projections. Yeah. All right, init graphics is the very first big thing that gets called from the main program, and it sets everything up. This is for things that need to be done once. Okay, repeat that to yourself. This is for things that need to be done once. Okay, so anything that needs to be done over and over, don't put it in here. Anything that needs to be done once, don't put it in, say, the display callback. Okay, because the display callback gets called over and over and over again. So this is to set up what you want to have go on. I want colors, I want double buffering, and I want depth buffering. Those things will make more sense when you look at the frame buffer notes. Here is the window position. 00 for Windows is the upper left of the screen. Here's the initial size I want for the windows, and poof, here's where I create the window with a title in the title bar. Okay, here is the color that I want to clear the screen with. And now I'm going to set up the callback functions. These are responses to events. They're functions that you create and they're in response to certain events. Not all of them have to be set. Here's the full list. This is the full list for Glut. Glut is the interface between OpenGL and your Windows system. The ones that are really crucial, well, they're the ones that have been set. You know, when you want to redisplay something, when you want to resize the window, when you want to read from the keyboard, when you want to look at the mouse buttons, the mouse motions, and so on. Anything that's been nulled out means it's an event that we don't care about. And you actually don't have to include those if you don't specify a callback, then Glut will assume that it's the equivalent of null, but this code puts it in there so you can see everything that's being set. Glue is the GL extension wrangler, and there's reasons it really needs to be there for, especially for Windows. I can tell you about it sometime. It's just a very sordid story about Microsoft stopping to support OpenGL once DirectX was around. This is how to get around that. All right, there's a function called init lists. It is setting up these things called display lists. In display lists, you put graphics commands that will never change. Okay, so why create them more than once if they'll never change? We just hard code them into this list. This list is stored in GPU memory where it can be gotten at very quickly. And when you call it up from the display callback, poof, it's right there. So we're creating the list, we're filling the list, we're ending the list. Again, when you get to the display list note set, this will make more sense. Might as well put the axes in its own display list as well. No point drawing them over and over. They don't change. Here's the keyboard callback. This is what happens when you hit the keyboard. Okay, that creates an event. The event calls this function, and that function switches on the key and does something. So if you hit the O key, you're changing the projection to orthographic, P key, perspective, Q key, you're quitting. There's not a lot here. You can put as many things in there as you want. That's kind of fun when you start customizing your own program with your own hotkeys. So yeah, have at it. Now, this part down here, this forces a call to your display callback. That's what it's there for. And so if you were to say set which projection to perspective, but nobody called your display callback, then you would never know. You would never know that you've changed the projection to perspective. This forces that to happen. You don't call display yourself. Okay, there's some timing reasons why it's better to have the sort of the window manager, the glut manager, the event manager call display for you. And that's what this is all about. So in any callbacks that are changing global variables, be absolutely certain that these two lines of code are down at the bottom and get executed. Like in the middle here, don't do a return. If you did a return, say right here, then you would never know you've changed the projection. All right, this is the mouse button callback. This just tracks when a button goes down, when a button goes up. In the logic of this program, it's just keeping track of what button went up and down. Oh, here it's also handling scroll wheels. We put the scroll wheel logic in here. Here's the mouse motion, and this was what happens when you move the mouse and a button's down. And here's where it's changing those rotation angles. So you can rotate the scene with the left mouse button. Here is changing the scale factor. You can change the scale factor with the middle mouse button, and you can change this all you want. Have fun. Here's the reset function. The reset function sets all the global variables to decent values. Again, it's very easy to get lost in 3D, and if you have some menu item that just says reset everything, I want to start over, that's really good. This is if you want to resize the window. We've got this function, but we don't really do anything with it because the size of the window is handled in the display callback. You could do it here if you wanted. This program doesn't. Also, if you change the window's visibility, like what if you put a big text window on top of your graphics window? That would force this to get called, and it'll tell you that. So you actually could do something. That is, if you've got some time-consuming physics simulation going on, and somebody puts a big fat text window on top of your graphics window, there's no point running the physics simulation. You're not going to see it anyway. That's what this visibility is for. It's not used in this program, but it's here in case you find a good use for it. Now, down here, some handy utilities. Here's just a little utility function we wrote to draw X, Y, Z axes. That's really nice in all your programs because as you rotate the scene, you can see how your scene's supposed to be oriented. This function here is to read in a BMP file and use it as a texture map. And this will make more sense when we get to the texture mapping notes, but it's here for that. You don't need it now, but boy, you're going to need it later. Yeah, here. This changes hue saturation value to red, green, blue. If you've looked at the end of the getting started notes, you know what hue saturation value is. This converts HSV numbers to RGB numbers. OpenGL needs red, green, blue, RGB, in order to do color, but sometimes HSV is more convenient to talk in. So that's why this is here. Here's the cross product, dot product, unit vector. These will be handy when you do project number 2. And they're handy, all through computer graphics anyway, but you'll see them for the first time in Project 2. So anyway, that's what the sample code looks like, and that's what the different pieces are. You are welcome to embellish this all you want. In fact, I'm secretly hoping you do. I'm secretly hoping you add more hotkeys and more menu items and all kinds of other stuff because this is clearly fun, and once you get the hang of this, you have a lot of control over what shows up on the screen.